I'll just start by saying I'm just such a huge fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because like some people, they create beautiful things and some people say beautiful things. And I think you've managed to combine both worlds. And
That's very nice. Thank you.
sure. And so what you and Tom have built is incredible. And I want to help. So I'm interviewing you because I want to share your story, but I'm also just really excited for what you guys are doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's so lovely. Yeah, I feel like that's a great aim, or a big aim of mine, is kind of marrying that text with the imagery.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Well, I would love to start kind of in the middle.
Sure. That
And
sounds like a
really,
good spot.
yeah, and I mean the auction just ended, and I would love to know how it went and how did you feel about it, and did it meet your expectations? I just want to hear about the experience of the auction for you.
Yeah, well, the auction for us, it was very late last night that it ended, and it was great. I feel like it's really hard within this Web3 space specifically to kind of figure out what your expectations are, and yeah, what path your work is on, I guess, especially in terms of people collecting it. But we were really happy with how it went. It got exciting at the end, and it went to a man who's already a pretty avid collector. So, and I think that's John Sides, Kim Side is his name. And I think he's only managed to get things on secondary thus far. So it was actually really lovely. Like, most of the people bidding on it were either already collectors, or I knew that they had been trying to get a piece for a little while. So it's kind of nice in that way for it to go to people that we know kind of within our community who are familiar with our work and things like that. Yeah, so we were really stoked with how it went. And yeah, we'll be reaching out to John today to start the process of doing his commissioned piece, his custom piece. So yeah, it'll be exciting.
So I saw he has 8 angels already.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, you have these collectors of this incredible patron saint collection, and it's like adding another good friend to a road trip. You feel like you needed to tell them, hey, like, we're going to be adding another friend. Is that okay with you guys? Is that cool? Or you're like, hey, no, you're going to love it. You trust me as an artist, and therefore you trust me to add. Did you feel like you needed to kind of like take the temperature of your community before doing this? Or did you feel like, hey, it's part of my artistic mandate that I can do it because it feels right?
Probably the latter, but I guess with it being kind of informed by our community, I would say that it was definitely something that we decided to just try out. But the idea came to us because of the amount of people that reach out and either connect with the patron saints that are already in the collection and the descriptions, or there's a lot of people that reach out talking about who would be the patron saint in their own lives. And so this was kind of a knock on from the response that we'd already been getting from our community. And I think as well on a personal level, it was more a bit of an experiment to see what other people's ideas or what other people would want from the collection. So at the moment, I create these characters that are pretty much based on my own experience, or the way I view the world. But I know that everyone views the world differently, and that, will have different nuanced experiences. And so it was kind of a way to reach out and see what other people's patron saints would be, because I'm sure there'd be a bunch out there that would be very different from my own. But we didn't necessarily, float it with the community first. I think it's a tough thing to do, because it's again, the Web3 space is kind of a new area for artists, especially in how you interact with your collectors is different from how I would interact with my collectors in the traditional art world. And it's much more collaborative in a sense, because you are building a community, and it's it's built on relationships. So it's a bit of a new thing, kind of feeling like you are creating work in a bit more of a collaborative sense than perhaps I'm used to. But also, I think sometimes it's good just to kind of trust your own instinct and try something. And we weren't sure if the auction would go well at all, because there are a few factors at play, whether people, I guess, collectability, and whether it can be able to be sold on if someone's gotten a patron saint of someone really personal to them, and what that does for, secondary sales and all these other factors that you don't think about into the traditional art world at all. But I think it's important just to try things, and sometimes they might not go well and sometimes they do. So I think it went well for us, or well enough to not feel like it was a blip.
And I believe the collection prior to the auction was women and non-binary in terms of its focus. I don't know how this collector, I don't know what pronouns this collector uses, but if the collector associates himself as male, is that going to change the dynamic of the collection for you, or kind of how do you feel about kind of adding a member of the family that is different than the rest of the family?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a bit, and I'm not sure. It's something that I'm going to gauge, I think, with the winner of the auction. From the general response, I think because the collection is known for being saints of, the everyday woman or non-binary person, the response is usually if there's men who are, and I do have quite a few male collectors, if they are talking about, patron saint suggestions, it's usually based on the women in their lives. I mean, I do actually think, and this kind of came to mind after I'd begun the collection, but I do have one male patron saint in that collection already, called the patron saint of Boys Do Cry. And I think I put that in because it felt kind of right to do so. And I think I also just felt like drawing a boy, but it's one of those things where I think the female experience and the non-binary experience, although I can't actually talk to the non-binary experience because I identify as a woman, but I think so much of that experience is actually affected by men. And I think this idea, or not this idea, but the history that we have of kind of toxic masculinity, and the pressures that males face actually, deeply, deeply impact or directly impact our lives as women. And so for me, that's kind of an area that I would be interested in exploring, whether that is within this patron saint collection, because, you know, I have specifically said that they are patron saints of women, but I would also feel like the patron saint of non-toxic masculinity would also be someone that would look over the female experience as well, because they, you know, it's interconnected. So in terms of what John, who I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure he identifies as a male. Yeah, in terms of what he wants to get, I don't know, it's uncharted territory. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to make sure that you know, his hopes and dreams we can find a way for that to align with the collection, so it's not just a completely random, and maybe that's also to do with the description of it.
Thank you. Regarding the patron saints, do they come into your life as vocabulary, like when you're doing a task or thinking about something or going about your day? Do you think about yourself being a patron saint of X, a patron saint of Y? You know, do you kind of embody the different positions that the saints occupy?
I kind of wish that I did, but I feel like I don't. I think throughout my day, I think my day-to-day life is so busy that I actually don't necessarily get the time to even go into that headspace while I'm just kind of going about, you know, kids and work and all of the things. But I think when I'm drawing is kind of when that headspace is able to open up. So it will usually be that I will, I guess that's a moment that I get to reflect on my experiences or on the day that I had, and that's usually when the ideas for the patron saints come, or I remember something that happened. So it's usually a retrospective thing where I might observe something during the day or the week or the month or the year, and then it'll come to me later on when I actually get a quiet moment.
Sure. I think it was Tom who said in your previous live that you were kind of in the process of moving and 4 kids and 2 big projects and had all this work and so much to do. And I was just thinking about, how did you manage in that time when there was so much to produce and express and manage and do as an artist and a human? How did you navigate that?
I mean, it was very challenging. It was definitely very challenging, and it kind of just pushed me as an artist and a creator, which was a really good thing. So I feel like before I even embarked on Meta Angels, I was starting to feel creatively burnt out, and I was feeling very worried about how I would be able to produce the volumes of work needed at the standard that I wanted to be able to do. But I think when you have those big kind of deadlines and there's not necessarily a plan B or an option B, you just push through it. And I think the main thing, I guess it also just depends on how you work. I think for me, historically, I quite enjoy working under pressure. And I quite enjoy taking on those like ridiculous challenges, and, I'll say yes and then think about how I can make it work after. So this was definitely a classic example of that. But just kind of on steroids, I guess. But yeah, we had to navigate a lot because we did have 4 kids under the age of 10 that needed us to be there and be switched on to their lives, and they weren't at school for all of it. really. So, and we were staying in various Airbnbs throughout Darwin. So we were having to kind of navigate their lives, which we pulled them out of, well, we'd been in Darwin on holiday. And then while we were on holiday, things kind of changed, where we realized that we wouldn't be going back to Arnhem Land where we were living. Yeah, so it was definitely a lot. It was a lot for the kids, to, you know, they had to really be very understanding and independent, and the older ones had to help out a lot with the younger ones. But I think the beauty of having two of us working on it together meant that we could always tag team. So we could tag team parenting, and also we could tag team the work, and we could tag team meetings and things like that. So it was really about sharing that responsibility out, so that, you know, if one of us just could not stay up till 1 a.m. to have a meeting with America, then the other one could do that. And then that meant that the sleeping person got to parent the next morning. And so yeah, it was just a lot of, I guess, compartmentalizing and sharing out the roles, but just going like, there is an end date to this, and making sure everyone knew that there was an end date, and it was just a period of intensity that was, yeah, going to end.
So I know you've mentioned that Web3 as a space has some differences in terms of building collaboratively, building within community, different kinds of questions. I would really like to know, what are some things that you're curious about, either things that other artists are doing or things that you could do? Where is your curiosity around this space and what might be next to explore?
I think the main area of interest that kind of sparks excitement for me, and I think for Tom as well, is, I think that the potential of art meeting a smart contract, really. So this, there's a lot of very cool things that I feel like I'm only starting to kind of skim the surface of, with what people are actually doing out there, because I know that there is a whole universe of people that I'm not aware of yet, who are doing incredible things. But I guess the idea of how you can manipulate your art using a smart contract, and the idea of even things like the idea of an ape mutating because you got a mutation serum, like that's very cool. Or what Flower Girls have done with their cross-pollination program, where you get seeds and flowers start to grow on your flower girls depending on where they're positioned and what other flower girls they're next to. So that kind of stuff is very much outside of anything I've ever worked with or been exposed to really in the past. So this idea that you can manipulate your art once it's already out there, or have things develop or evolve, is pretty exciting. Also, I think for us, it feels a little bit like creating, I don't know, like big fun games in terms of how you can, I guess we've been talking a lot about how we can value our collectors, and how we can make our collections kind of link with each other and interact with each other. And so there's, I guess, this whole idea between the interaction between your different art collections and that interaction that's carried through the collections by your collectors. So yeah, that kind of aspect seems like a pretty fun, but also like cognitively intense thing to think about. But I reckon that's the exciting part of art on Web3.
So, for example, I mean, you mentioned the apes mutating, and you mentioned Flower Girls, and kind of these ideas of bringing work to life using smart contracts and using, you know, the tools available. If technology weren't an obstacle, do you imagine that the patron saints would be able to have different qualities and come to life in different kinds of ways? Is that something that would interest you?
I think it would interest me. I think, yeah, absolutely. If technology wasn't a barrier, which, you know, it never necessarily is, it just takes time to figure it out. But I think whether the patron saint collection would be something that would, I don't know, be subject to evolution, I'm not sure, because there's also, you know, it brings us also back to this, the complexities of dealing with your holders and your community and wanting to be able to, you know, value their expectations of what they've bought into as well. But I think for us, it would possibly be something that would happen down the line. So, you know, maybe there would be a future collection where it from the outset, you know, that things might change and evolve. Or maybe it's something to do with being a holder of both Wonder Country and Patron Saint, and maybe there's an interaction between your Patron Saint and your Wonder Country that can inform a future piece or a future piece and a future collection. So I'm not sure. It's definitely in kind of incubator days, but finding ways for things to develop and interact is definitely on our cards.
So I have just two more quick questions, if that works for you.
Sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Will you be, you know, spending time on other blockchains? I know you're on Ethereum right now. Will you visit Tezos? Will you visit Solana? Will you spend time and develop elsewhere in the near future, or have you found a home in Ethereum?
Ethereum feels very comfortable to us. We are on Solana in the form of honey badgers. So I think that is definitely an avenue. Solana does seem pretty exciting, and it's kind of booming at the moment. There's a lot of things about Solana that, you know, are more sustainable, eco-friendly. It's cheaper, there's less gas fees, and it's definitely more accessible to a lot of parts of the world, rather than having to buy into this kind of exclusive ETH club, it feels like sometimes. So I think definitely being, you know, I'm very interested in Tezos because it feels like there's a lot of interesting art and artists that get put out on that blockchain specifically. And I think I kind of just fell into Ethereum when I first entered into the space and didn't necessarily look into all of the different options that were available. And then since then, haven't necessarily had the time to research. So I think it is on my radar to be looking into other blockchains, because I think it would be doing yourself a disservice to not be at least across them and not be making a, you know, I wouldn't be making a educated choice to not be on them because I just don't know at the moment. So yeah, we're just going with what we know for now, but yeah, it's definitely on the radar.
Awesome. So my last question is, I think you mentioned that, you know, you guys might have previously held an opinion about social media that you no longer hold. I'd like you to unpack that a little bit, because I thought that was an interesting, very quick comment, and I would love to hear more about what changed and why. I saw you on Instagram in 2012, so I know you've been there for a while, but
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I've been on Instagram for a long time, and I'd been, you know, peddling my wares and hustling my way around there for my traditional art work. You know, up until we went on our big road trip a year ago. So, but yeah, for me, I've always had a a difficulty with Instagram in the way that I think it can suck you in to a world that's not a very true representation of the people you're looking at. So, you know, I think if you're, especially for me, I was running my business on Instagram, and then I was also working as a social media manager for another small business and doing all of their socials. So I was on Instagram a lot. And then throughout that period, I also had postnatal depression and anxiety after our second child. And I think this relationship that I was having with social media meant that it was almost a trigger point for me in that period of my life, where I think and I'm sure that I'm not alone in that, where suddenly you're comparing yourself to all of these other people and not necessarily aware that the snapshot that they're giving you is extremely inaccurate of their actual lives. And so I guess the whole influencer game on Instagram especially it can be quite toxic. And so it was a point of conversation in mine and Tom's life for quite a number of years, this kind of toxic relationship with Instagram. And, you know, as I recovered from my postnatal depression, I became a lot better at self-managing and how I interacted with social media. But it felt like a necessary evil in my life to be able to run and market myself as an artist. Tom, however, you know, he quit Facebook and Instagram. I don't know if Tom was ever really on Instagram. He's sitting opposite me. Zach says hi.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Tom. Nice to meet you.
But yeah, Tom's.
Hey,
That's
how's it going?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, Tom's sworn off social media for many years and has been, you know, rightly very critical of it and why it needs to be in our lives and what impact it has. The change with that, I guess, was Twitter. And you know, I think there's still a lot of the same issues with Twitter. But I think the way that people interact on Twitter is more authentic, even though there's a whole lot of, you know, people out there that aren't doxed. It still feels more authentic than the influencer game on Instagram or TikTok or something like that. So I think the way that it's set up, where it's, you know, it's short, snappy tweets and you get instant responses, means that there's not the like refinement that goes on with your posts when you do something on Instagram, I guess. But yeah, once we started seeing the response to my work, and also I guess the championing of I guess inclusivity in the space and bringing in more females to the space, it felt like a really friendly area of Web3 to be in. And I know not all of Web3 is like that. You know, you've got to curate your little corner. But I feel like the relationships that we've built on, you know, through Twitter have been, you know, real relationships that we will call them and have a chat. And I don't think I ever met someone through another social media platform where I would be inclined to do that. Yeah, so, you know, Tom's kind of come around to Twitter as a necessity, but also is, you know, has built his own relationships on there. So yeah, it's an ongoing project, it's an ongoing conversation.
Wonderful. I'll say a few words after I'm done with the recording, if that's okay. But
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really want to thank you for everything that you shared and for how candidly and thoroughly you shared. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to
No
hit
worries
stop
at
now.
all.